This segment is from the Piano Inspires podcast, Season 2, Episode 13, featuring Jeremy Siskind with host Andrea McAllister.
And when I was about 11 or 12, this is half a joke, half serious, but my teacher, who I'd been with since I was really young, thought to herself, I have a student with a great ear and really awful technique. He should study jazz piano.
Oh.
And she sent me to a former student of hers who was a jazz pianist. And I think beyond that, great ear, terrible technique. I'm always restless. I've always been restless. I don't love doing the same thing twice. If I'm telling a story, I tell it a different way every time. And so it was just such a natural fit for me to play things that were going to be changing all the time and evolving, and that I could put myself into. Of course you can put yourself into an interpretation of a Bach fugue or a Mozart sonata, but my restlessness didn't accommodate always playing the same notes all the time. And I just always wanted to veer off of the page. So it was a really natural fit. And I'm grateful to have had such a selfless teacher. She's Suzanne Wong, if she's out there, who, didn't want to hang on, or not didn't want to hang on to a student, but had the generosity to say, this isn't really my place. I'm not serving the student's interests best, and gave a really fantastic recommendation. And I was able to study with my first jazz teacher when I was about 12.
Okay. That's so, like you say, that's so giving of her.
Oh, totally.
Because it could have been, the student has a great ear. Think of everything he could do with Bach or Beethoven, because now we just need to develop the technique and
Could be.
off we go. But to recognize that spark in you and maybe it was the restlessness and the need for just expansion.
Yeah.
That's really quite giving of her to be able to see and to give you.
And who knows, in retrospect, maybe I was just really annoying too. And she was like, I'm done with this kid. Like,
Maybe we'll err on the side of generosity.
yeah. I'm sure it was a
and
little
say-
bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
So you went to your new jazz teacher at the
Yeah.
age of 12.
Something like that, yeah.
So did you feel that your technique got better or your ear expanded, or how did those lessons change your path?
Yeah. Well, I think as much as anything, I got just introduced to the syntax of jazz, right? How do you actually play a jazz performance? I've improvised in some ways, composed in some ways, but what does the actual grammar of jazz look like? And part of that was just introducing me to different recordings and really listening through, guiding me through, getting me familiar with how to play on a lead sheet and have this kind of organized structure of improvisation. So that was really meaningful. And then as I got into high school, we were lucky enough to have 3 or 4 core students who were really enthusiastic about the music. And jazz in particular feels like something that you need to learn with peers. It's really hard to do that in a vacuum. And to anybody interested in studying jazz, I always recommend find some people to play with, find some people to study with, because it is kind of a social music. So as I was in high school, I started to, study with this teacher and then play with this group of students and
All
really
pianists?
No.
Mhm.
In the people from the jazz band. So
Okay.
we had a combo that played at a coffee shop every week. And then we started getting gigs out from, expand out from there. And we were working, semi-professionally in these different contexts and just logging that time at the instrument that I think, especially in something like jazz where there's just so many things that need to get from the foreground into the background. You don't want to be thinking about the harmony. You don't want to be thinking about the form of the
Right.
tune. You don't want to be thinking about the scales. So you just need to be logging that time, like speaking a language. You don't want to be thinking about the verb tenses. You just need to spend time immersing yourself.
Right. And to do that at such a young age is so important because, as you know, the older you get, the harder it is to learn a new language. It's
Absolutely.
harder, and just to trust yourself to do that without thinking so much.
Yes, and just to get even the repertoire of tunes. Jazz musicians have to have a couple hundred tunes just up in their brain and be able to access them at any time. And I see how much harder that is now that I'm in my 30s to do than when I was in my teens. I could just start sucking stuff up, I've played this 5 times this week. So that's I've got it now, right? Whereas now it takes so much more intentional effort. As I got into high school, I really made some intentional choices towards music and towards creating time for that. I really liked sports, and I still do like sports. And I probably could have like been on the baseball team if I'd really, gone out for that. But I kind of made the decision that I want to really create some time for music. I want to really get serious about this. And, I had some really good voices in my head saying, this is a really difficult career and it's really hard to make it. And you really need to be the best of the best in order to make it. And I started taking that really seriously instead of, instead of taking that as a sign to give up. I took it as a sign to redouble my efforts and to really find a way to clear a path to have lessons. Because it's really hard, especially, jazz pianists, the good ones, I think, don't stop taking classical piano lessons, right? You still need to have that time to still just be focused on the instrument. And so a lot of jazz pianists in that high school and college period will take their classical lessons. They'll also take their jazz lessons. And so that's double the time in lessons. That's double the practicing, hypothetically. And it is really hard to juggle those things. It takes, I see the struggle for my jazz students to do everything, and it's really tough.
Right. Yes, it's I see 18-year-olds coming to college, and you think, how do you know what you want to be for the rest of your life when you're 18? But really, as musicians, it's such a calling, and there's most of the time, I'm not going to say every 12-year-old knows that this is the path that they want to take, but you do have to spend that time in that really tough part of life. You're making these decisions, maybe not about what I want to do for the rest of my life, but how you want to spend your time. And it seems that music was something that really just fed you during that time and led you to this knowing.
Well, apparently I'm an Enneagram 3,
Okay.
which apparently means that I'm an achiever. And so when I made that decision for music, I decided like, hey, I want to excel in this way. Like I want to stand out. And yeah, fortunately, like I was saying, I did have this environment both through Yamaha, which has this great program called the Junior Original Composition Program, which is essentially a contest. They don't like to use the word contest, but essentially it is kind of a contest that happens every year. And so I got recognition through that. I got to go to Japan twice to perform as a winner or, something as a US representative in that contest. And then in high school, we really had a great culture, both in the arts and in general, of a lot of community around music. And so I was feeling very fed and very recognized and making a lot of interesting connections in that world. So yeah, I was getting a lot of like that kind of feedback that turns into this loop of, wow, if this person's recognizing for this, well, I think I should redouble my efforts. I should do even more. And so that kind of thing was really fun to experience.
Be sure to listen to the full episode on our website, pianoinspires.com, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.